can I do? The night is young and I'm in love with you.
We interrupt the program now in progress to bring you a special report from Guam. This report will come to you via special military facilities and is being released at this time to the combined American networks. Now for the special news from Advanced Naval Headquarters, far out in the Pacific, we take you to Guam. Go ahead, Guam.
The following communique has this minute been issued by C.W. Nimitz, Fleet Admiral, U.S. Navy, Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Pacific Fleet and Pacific Ocean Areas. The communique: Vice Admiral Mark A. Mitcher is in command of a powerful task force of the Pacific Fleet, is now attacking enemy aircraft, air bases, and other military targets in and around Tokyo. Surface units of the Pacific Fleet are bombarding Iwo Jima. Aircraft of the Strategic Air Force Pacific Ocean Areas are bombing Iwo Jima and nearby positions in the Boreans. The fleet forces are under the tactical command of Admiral R.A. Spruance, Commander, 5th Fleet. This is Art Friend returning you to the United States.
In place of the program usually heard at this time, Mutual brings you a special news report from an American battleship 60 miles off Iwo Jima in the volcanoes. This is the first word heard from the American 5th Fleet in several weeks during which the 5th Fleet has been cloaked in complete silence. Throughout this report, you will hear the actual sound of anti-aircraft pom-poms and 5-inch guns. You will hear Leslie Nichols describing the crash of an enemy plane into the sea. This report, which was made in the dead of night under a clear, moonlit sky, was flown from the battle scene to Guam, and from that far-off Pacific Fleet outpost, it was sent almost 6,000 miles to the mainland.
This is Leslie Nichols speaking from a battleship which is not far off the volcano island. We have just come under attack, and our guns have opened up, and just now, our guns, or at least the guns of one of the forts, have shot down an enemy plane. It has fallen over on the horizon, just ahead of us. We're steaming in the direction of it, and now it appears that we can see just the remnants of the plane burning on the water up ahead. I can dimly make out, in the light of a little more than a new moon, the shadows of the other ships around us. There go our guns again. They're just passing the cotton around up here. Our position now is high up on the foremast tower of this battleship. There's a great deal of smoke around the fort. You just heard our 5-inch shells go again. That is a report that planes are circling the ship. We may open up at any moment. There seems to be an enemy plane off the port beam directly across from me here. Guns and our 40 millimeter were just pouring lead up there into the sky. When those 5-inch guns go off, well, you certainly know it. It almost shakes the very stuffing out of you. And that concludes this broadcast from a battleship with the 5th Fleet, some 60 miles off the island of Iwo Jima. And just now, here's a flash report. The Admiral of our group tells us that we deserve a well done for having shot down that Jap plane. And you ought to see the gunners and all the crew of this mighty battleship rejoicing now, because it happens to be their first Jap plane.
We've been doing a lot of singing aboard here. Before we got into dangerous waters, we used to sing at night up under the stars, and this sergeant was our prize singer here. We used to call him back. Now, what song do you suggest?
Well, we have one called Bless 'Em All. You've probably all heard it. And someone else wrote some more words. I don't know who done it, but we have these other words also we'll add in.
That's a pretty popular song with the Marines. We know the Raiders sang it, and it's been sung all over the South Pacific. And if you sing it out good and loud, maybe they can get the words back home, and maybe it'll mean something to them.
Yeah, I think it will.
All right, how about leading them?
All right, you guys ready? Now loud. We're Marines and we're fighting like hell, heading for Tokyo. We've got every weapon to shoot up the town. We're scattering Japs all around. It's a hell of a place, this part of the world. Nothing but jungles and swamps. But when the war's over, we'll all live in clover. So come on, guys, next stop is Guam. Bless 'em all, bless 'em all. The long and the short and the tall. Bless all the pelicans and dog faces too. Bless all my friends and above all bless you. So we're saying goodbye to you all. As back to our foxholes we crawl, there'll be no promotions this side of the ocean. So cheer up, my boys, bless them all.
I'd like you to meet some of these Marines very briefly. Their attention at the moment is focused on the beach and on the firing going on. But let's call a fellow over here. What do you do?
Gunner. I'm gunner on the half track.
You're going to handle machine guns while we're going in if you have to?
Yes.
What state are you from?
Arkansas.
How do you feel right now?
Oh, I feel all right.
You lost all nervousness?
Well, I never was nervous yet, and I'm not nervous yet.
Good. You thinking of anybody back home?
Yes.
Who's back there?
Mom, my dad.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'd like you to meet the gun commander now. Can't give you his name because of military security, but say something, will you?
There's as much I can say. I just wish we was up there on the beach with the rest of the fellas. Our turn will come soon enough, I guess.
You're anxious to get there, huh?
That's right.
All right, thanks a lot. He's hanging on the side of this tank lighter, staring out at the beach with his helmet thrown back over his head. And here's another fella.
There isn't much I can say.
What do you do, Jerry?
Communications chief for the weapons company.
You're all set to go, huh?
All set and rare.
Well, I haven't seen you look nervous the entire time.
Don't feel nervous. It's just 2 butterflies in the stomach, that's all.
All right, thanks. An American plane, 2 of them, 2 bombers are going over us. Now you may have heard them in the background. I'd looking around now to see somebody else. Come on over here. I want to give you a chance. Here's a great big, tall, real typical Marine who said he wants to say something to the folks back home. And incidentally, he is a fella who is so typical. You've heard that the only thing practically left to a serviceman is his right to gripe. Well, this old boy has really overplayed that. Now we're going to give him a chance publicly. You got any gripes just before you go into combat? You feel fine?
Yeah.
Everything good? You got the best chow in your pack?
Sure, everything.
All right, I see you got a new pair of dungarees. How'd you get that?
Number 4 holes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Well, he didn't have much to gripe about now. So I guess everything's all right. And now we're streaking in to the line of departure. That means we are going to the line from which we will shortly leave. You can hear our motor, the engine of this tank lighter, roaring as we move quickly through the water up to a distance of about 2,000 yards from the shore. There's all hell to pay directly ahead of us. The beach looks as though it's practically on fire. We've now heard word that casualties in those first waves were very light. The terrific roar around us is coming from mostly from our own amphibious tractors. There go American dive bombers going down on the beach, back of the beach. We can see the beach very clearly now. I'll tell you one thing, I'm thinking right now of my home, of my wife and my little daughter, and I hope they're all right. And I hope I come back to them all right. That's about what you think of now. I tried to get some of these men to talk, but I know deep down that's what they're thinking of. All their big Jap stuff dropping in the water up ahead of us a little. We'll probably have to go through it. There's great clouds of black smoke. What was that? Huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, we can see machine guns on the cliff now. Directly ahead of us, firing out at us. Boy, they're coming straight at us now. I think we're a little out of their range. I'm not sure. I hope so. The whole wall is covered with smoke. There, we've hit it. We're grounding on it. We're up on it. We're up on it. In a minute, the ramp will go down, and the men going to stream out. Non-com has just wished everybody good luck. Everybody's sort of grabbed. Machine gun just fired. Our machine gun just fired from the half track. 3 or 4 shots. You probably heard it. The men are now going out ahead. They're moving out ahead of the half track. Boy, it's up to my knees. I think my pistol got wet. I don't know. Pretty high. I'm moving away from the half track now. The men are motioning to each other to move forward. The surface of the coral is quite level, although it's bumpy, but it's not, at least not jagged, not full of foam. What's the matter? Hey, spread out! Spread out! Hey, John, I'd like to be in there with you. There's a lot of fire coming in this water, but no one I've seen yet has been hit, fortunately. It's amazing you can't see anyone in the beach. Yes, I see a Marine running along through the coconuts. Yeah, there's one boy been hit. One boy's been hurt now. They're putting him into the rubber boat. 4 men putting him into the rubber boat. I don't know who it is. Can't see him. But he has been hurt. And they've got him. He's lying on his side. Another boy's just been hurt. Another boy's been hit. In fact, I think he's been killed. The officer is hollering at him to get him. No, he's all right. He's climbed into the rubber boat, and I guess he's all right. There's a lot of fire around us now. We're almost at shore. I should say about 100 feet or a little more from shore. There are 2 Marines now in our rubber boat. Another boy's just been hurt. He's hanging onto the tail with both arms. They tell him to slow up while they stick a guy in the tail. Oh, there's one Marine lying on his back. Now we're at the beach. There's one Marine lying on his back with blood pouring out of him into the water. And here, we're reaching the beach now. We're going to come up on it. And there's fire all around us. And the Marines are still on the beach. They have not made any further headway. At least there's a whole, must be 2 or 3 waves here on the beach. In fact, all of the half tracks are lined up now around us on the beach. None of them have been able to move past here. There go the corpsmen are walking around. They don't seem to be taking any cover. They're walking upright, looking for casualties, moving from one guy to the next. Men are jumping back and forth next to us. Now some of the Marines are motioning for the next waves to come in. And here comes another half track behind us with men coming in after us. They're waiting too. I don't think we've left any men in the water.
Somehow the battle for Iwo epitomizes the whole Pacific War. Rugged, dirty, barren, and insignificant, useless except in war, but the scene of one of the cruelest fights in this country's history. In a recent unique broadcast, Bud Foster, on a flagship at Iwo, answered questions put to him by Robert McCormick back on Guam. Here is Bob McCormick in Guam, beginning the 2-way broadcast with Bud Foster at Iwo.
There's been a lot of talk about the Japs going underground. Just exactly what does this mean?
Well, Bob, it's almost unbelievable. Everything on Iwo Jima is underground or buried in the side of the volcano. Nothing I have seen so far during the time I've spent on this island has been above the ground. The Marines have had to dig the Japs out of every sunken pillbox, blockhouse, and cave that escaped a direct hit. And there were lots of them. And there'll be lots more before this is over, no matter how many tons of shells we pour in here. One pillbox I was in was buried about 10 feet deep, and a long tunnel led off to still another buried pillbox. Well, I started to crawl through to see what was what, in search of a decent souvenir for you, when one of the Marines warned me there might be more live Japs at the other end. So I beat a hasty retreat. It must have taken years to build up these fortifications. Many of them are solid concrete, 1.5 feet thick. Only a big shell or a Marine with a flamethrower or well-placed grenade can put them out of commission.
Square one around those tractors.
We're trying to pick up the communications from the tanks which have been landed ashore as a...
Hold it up, there's a Jap. Hold it. Christ almighty, turn your turret on, will you? Right back here, mimic your turret. Got a mortar right behind that tree, right behind it. Oh no, move farther, move. Be looking right on the face. All right, right there, bueno. See where that green thing is right there? Fire burst the machine gun. Too high, low, right there. There, you got it. That's it, you got him. Another one right in there. A little lower, that's it. Put it right through the tree, a little lower. You're still wiggling. That's it, you got the machine gun. That's it, you got it that time. Yeah. A couple more, they're still kicking. Another bird. That ought to have it. Okay, square one, let's move on. Let's go, triangle one. We have a Jap 35 sticking an eye out in the field here.
At this very moment, American Marines are battling stiff resistance on the island of Iwo. This may be one of the toughest fights in the entire Pacific War. For details on the battle in progress, we take you now to Guam for a report by war correspondent Arthur Prim, speaking for the combined American networks via special military facilities. Go ahead, Guam.
This is Arthur Prim speaking from Pacific Fleet Headquarters at Guam. I have just returned from a breathtaking observation trip over the bitter battlefield at Iwo Jima in the Volcano Islands. And I can assure you that the fighting there is fierce and bloody. As we flew in close to the ground over the southern part of the island where the fighting is centered, we all sensed that below us was developing the most significant and grimmest battle of the Pacific War to date. Iwo Jima is 8 square miles of unadulterated hell, with hundreds of carrier-based planes in the air and more than 800 ships of all types and sizes standing offshore. We came in over Iwo at high noon. The weather was rough and the sea was rough, but through the driving rain we could see more ships than any of us had ever seen together before in our lives. Altogether, it was a mighty armada, but what caught our attention at once was the scores and scores of planes which filled the sky. Our carrier-based attacking force was made up mostly of Curtiss Helldivers, Grumman Hellcats, and Grumman Avengers. On several occasions, we saw as many as 100 in the air at the same time. The 2 main objectives for our planes and surface vessels was the northern cliff of Mount Suribachi and the stone quarry which stands in the path of our northward advance. Dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters would come in groups of 4s, 10s, 20s, and 50s and drop their bombs against the side of the cliff where the Japs are tunneled in. Many of the planes were carrying rockets, since we could hear them over their intercom system being ordered to launch their rockets against the face of the cliff. At one time, 22 peeled off from 7,000 feet and roared in to launch their rockets against Suribachi and strafe the defenders there. After their run was completed, the observer was heard to say, "Good work, right on the butt." While the planes were carrying out their bombing runs, battleships, cruisers, and destroyers standing offshore also pumped their high-velocity shells into the side of the perpendicular cliff. Great plumes of smoke, dust, and flames leaped from the northern side of the volcano as if it were again erupting.
Iwo seemed to leap and then settle back again. We obviously regard this as our number one target at the moment, and it's easy to see why. As long as the Japs are dug in on its cliffs, they control the entire southern plain of the island, which is now the scene of savage fight. We hadn't lost many landing vessels on the beachhead, testifying to yesterday's official communique that the landing was made against slight resistance. None of our ships at sea had been damaged as far as we could see from the air, and there were probably not more than 24 landing boats smashed on the shore. Some units of our Marine forces have secured about 2/3 of the airfield in the south, and I could see our tanks lumbering along its 5,000-foot runway. On the western side of the airfield, a battle was still raging and was centered around a large volcanic depression wherein the Japs are entrenched. Our tanks had this area almost entirely surrounded, and we could see them shooting it out. Farther north, in the middle of the island, the Japs seem to be dug in along the runways of airfield number 2 and have barricaded themselves behind revetments on the field itself. They are very hard to spot, even from our low altitude, since they're almost entirely underground. They would have to be, since nobody could stand the tremendous plastering that island is taking if they had been on the surface. A group of planes had been circling the area at low altitude for several minutes, and I heard one of the pilots say, "Let's bomb this thing and get out of here. We're shot full of holes." At no time could I see our carrier fleet, but they must have been all around the area, since the planes seemed to be coming in from all different directions. By this time, I too thought it might be a good idea if we got out of there, and suggested the same to our pilot, Lieutenant John Brooks of Iowa. We made one more photographic run along the entire length of Iwo Jima and left. As we got several miles away, I could see a great pall of smoke and dust hanging over the entire island to a distance of almost 1,000 feet. The Battle of Iwo Jima will be recorded as one of the most savage ever fought by the United States Marines. We were only 20 miles south of Iwo Jima when a Grumman Avenger pulled up alongside our Liberator. The pilot stuck out his bronzed head, grinned, and jerked his right thumb up in front of him. It's that cocky, confident signal of the airman that everything's going to be okay. This is Arthur Prem speaking for the Combined American Network after a D+1 flight over Iwo Jima in the volcanoes.
Well, this is Staff Sergeant Alvin Josephi, Jr. Just behind the front lines, we've come up to one of the assault companies of the 21st Marines. And these men are just off the lines, they're freshening up and probably will be going back again. We want to describe some of them to you and let them talk to you. These men are in dungarees, they're camouflaged helmet covers, they're washing up. There have been barrels of water, 50-gallon drums, dumped here in this revetment underneath a damaged Japanese plane. And they are taking water from these drums, putting them in their helmets, and are soaking up their arms and chests and faces. How long is it, Joe, since you last had a bath? About 10 days. Well, what's your name, where you from, what you ate, and everything else? Corporal Joseph Garrettson, Pittman, New Jersey. And you're a scout, right? Right. And you haven't had a bath in 10 days? That's right. All right, here's the sergeant. What's your name? Sergeant Robert Fowler, Washington, D.C. Say, they call you the Goat, don't they? That's right. How did you get that name? Oh, Coleman gave me that a couple of years ago. Why? Because I look like a goat. Where was that, up in Bougainville? Oh, that was on the canal. Well, you've been in a couple of campaigns, haven't you? That's right. Bougainville and Guam and here. Well, how does Iwo Jima stack up to the other two? Stacks up pretty good. You mean this is tougher? This is. Here's a fella. What's your name? Pritchard. Corporal James S. Pritchard, Memphis, Tennessee. From Memphis, Tennessee. And what do you do? What's your job? Fire team leader. A fire team leader. Well, how did you get so shaved up? Do you shave every day up in the lines? This is the first time in 10 days. Has it been pretty tough going? Pretty rough, yeah. Now, what features this particular fighting? The pillboxes? Yes, sir. And what's that like? Well, it's pretty rugged. You don't know where they're at. Every time you face one pillbox, there's others covering you. Have you had a lot of casualties in this company? Several, yes, sir. Okay, thanks. How about some of the other fellas? Here's a fella, you even shampooed your hair. What's your name? Corporal Ernst P. Ewing, Uniontown, Pennsylvania. And how are you feeling after a few days of fighting here?
Well, I feel well as can be expected, I guess.
Have you gotten many nips?
Well, I don't know whether I say I shot them myself or not, but I guess I helped to get a few of them.
Are these Japs any tougher than others that you faced earlier?
I wouldn't say that these Japs are as tough as the others. They're a little better fortified on this island.
What's your right name?
My name is Jones, Noah C. Corman for the outfit here.
You're a corpsman with the outfit. You go along and take care of men who are wounded, right?
That's right. Do the best to patch them up.
All right. Have you had many casualties that you've had to work on?
I've had quite a few bad ones, but seem to take care of them okay.
Okay. All right. Who else haven't we had on here?
PFC Eugene D. Toronto, AP Southie Wilford, New York. Boy, do I wish I was back there now.
What would you do? What would you like back there other than a date with a girl? What are you thinking of?
What am I thinking of?
All right, he turns away with a big grin on his face. Oh, yeah, here's a fella. Kind of bashful, aren't you?
No, I'm just standing here.
What's your name?
Corporal Jack R. Watson from Sanford, North Carolina.
All right, what do you do, Corporal?
Demolition.
Have you blown up these pillboxes?
Well, they use flamethrower mostly. Don't get much chance to get up with a demolition. I think we'll get a chance later on, though.
We delay the music of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra to bring you a special report by the Secretary of the Navy, James B. Forrestal, speaking from Guam. This report was transcribed within the hour via special military facilities.
Up the precipitous side of a 600-foot extinct volcano, so precipitous that it seemed almost vertical, went a platoon of American Marines. Even through a glass, they seemed tiny figures scrambling skyward against a background of blue. And then a few minutes later, from the thousands of throats upon ships and on land and sea, came the sudden cry, "There goes the flag." That was how the Stars and Stripes went up on the first island of Japan's outer rim of island defenses. It was at 11 o'clock, Friday, February 23rd. We saw that flag going up halfway on the journey to shore with Lieutenant General Holland Smith of the United States Marines. It was the high point in a week of hard fighting, fighting which continues and will continue for some days to come. The Japs don't want to lose Iwo Jima. It's the first step in a sequence of doom for their homeland. They have put into it every kind of defense, and they have had years to plan that defense. As you know by now, Iwo Jima is a tiny island, 5 miles by 2.5, coming to a tapering point at its southern end. Its terrain, unlike that of some other atolls we have taken, rises some distance from the sea. Mount Suribachi, where our flag went up on Thursday, being its highest point. Its beaches are soft volcanic ash, so loose and crumbling that one Marine said it was like trying to dig a foxhole in a bag of wheat. The Japs took full and skillful advantage of that terrain and of the fact that there could be no tactical surprise as to where an enemy would land. We had to land on the beaches we did land on, and it had to be a frontal assault. They had planted mortars, rocket gun emplacements, and artillery all over that grim and barren island, so that there were streams of converging fire at the beachhead over which the Marines had to come scrambling in from the sea. The Japs, as they had done at Tarawa and at Kwajalein and at Saipan and Guam, had deep burrows under the shelving ridges of Mount Suribachi and caves along the rising shoreline to the north. Some of these caves had connecting galleries, and they will be digging dead Japs and some live Japs even out of them probably for many weeks to come. But in spite of all the skill of the Japanese defense, the Marines went ashore, and they have exacted since a 4-to-1 toll in death from our enemies. America is on the march in the Pacific, a march back to civilization, order, and decency. You can see it in islands like Guam and Saipan. The way back is being cleared by fighting men from every state in our Union. Blue Jackets, Marines, soldiers, and airmen. You can be confident of them, of the naval airmen who have done a tremendous job in this Iwo Jima operation, of the Marines, of the Army Air Forces, and you can be confident of their leaders, of men like Fleet Admiral Nimitz, Vice Admiral Turner, Lieutenant General Harmon, Lieutenant General Holland Smith, Major General LeMay of the 21st Bomber Command, and finally of that glorious aggregation of fighting men, the 5th Amphibious Corps of the Marines, which under Lieutenant General Harry Schmidt's direction is leading the fighting at Iwo Jima. It is a great team, and Americans can be proud of it, and of the country that produced them.
We return you to the United States.
The two top commanders leading the charge of the Iwo campaign are Vice Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, Commandant Pacific Fleet Amphibious Forces, and Lieutenant General Holland M. Smith, Commanding General of the Fleet Marine Force in charge of ground forces. Last night they met on the bridge of Admiral Turner's flagship off Iwo, and here is their conversation. Admiral Turner speaks first.
To me, the most impressive incident of the whole campaign so far was the raising of the flag on the top of Suribachi volcano Thursday morning by men of the 28th Marines. It affected me very deeply, and I'm sure that General Smith felt the same way about it. I certainly did. That was the most outstanding feature of the operation so far. Assault and capture that extinct volcano rising 556 feet with sheer cliffs around the south. Its capture was carried out in the face of the most tremendous difficulties, and I'm sure that only men imbued with the high spirit of the offensive, love of country, and esprit de corps could have taken that objective. For my part, General, I hope the American flag always flies there, that it's never allowed to come down. It should fly there also as a permanent memorial to the 28th Marines.
This is Sergeant Dick Mawson, United States Marine Corps combat radio correspondent with the veteran 4th Division. Sergeant Harvey Williams, our control recording engineer, and I are speaking to you now from the Motoyama Airport number 1 on the island of Iwo Jima, the Sulphur Island, after the 4th and 5th Divisions of the United States Marines landed to wrest this island from the Japanese and give Uncle Sam another base only 660 miles from the Japanese mainland itself. The fighting is going on now on a ridge just in front of us. You can probably hear the noise of the shelling in the planes overhead as they drop their bombs, and every once in a while you'll hear them strafe and send rockets down. As we look over on this ridge, the Marines have paths cut up the side of it to the top where the Japs are entrenched. You can probably hear the sound of that rocket barrage went off just then over on the ridge. And there's a scene of violent activity there as these Marines are going up and down that ridge, carrying supplies up to the men in the front lines and bringing casualties back out. And there are casualties, too. There are plenty of them. That's one of the Marine fighter planes just passed overhead. He's on his way back to his base to get a new supply of rockets. I notice he has rocket brackets on, but they are empty. A terrific bombardment just went on over that ridge. You can probably hear those planes strafing over there now. Quite a few planes are circling over that ridge. There's a new flight of about 15 or 20 of them coming in now from the south. And up to now, we haven't had any air opposition whatsoever. There hasn't been a single Japanese plane appear over the island. That swishing sound you heard is the rockets. They're moving. They let those rockets go back quite a ways behind the lines on the Jap emplacements. Put them over the ridge from us, and you can't hear them very well. There go 2 more planes down. The sound of those motors is too loud for you to hear very much of the sound of those rockets. There goes another plane down. Let's see if we can hear it. I imagine you heard that one all right. That was a little bit closer. That landed on this side of the ridge, probably somewhere near the front of the Japanese lines. Plane circles around and goes back off to sea then, and makes a wide circle and comes back in again. There are several planes in the sky overhead now, and they all seem to be making runs in. There goes a strafing plane. It got rid of its ammunition. It's rounds for that run, and it's going back out to sea. And there goes another rocket plane down. It's interesting to watch these things if you're on the right side of the fence. I wouldn't care to be a Japanese and watching it right now. These planes peel off in the same way as a dive bomber does, heads down directly toward its target. Then under each wing, you see a bright spot of light. And then a trail of fire and smoke comes out the front of the plane, pulls ahead and down into the ground. You hear that terrible rushing, tearing sound as these rockets go down, then a terrific concussion as the rockets explode. Strangely enough, there's anti-aircraft fire in the air again. There's two black blobs of it. How those gunner places can live through all that bombardment is something that's beyond me. They are well dug in, but in caves in the side of these hills, but still with all that terrific bombardment and with the naval gunfire going point blank at those cave openings, it's amazing how at this late date there can still be anti-aircraft emplacements to give trouble to the aviators. They've been using a lot of white phosphorus bombs on there, and the bomb explodes in a huge puff of white smoke in the air, and from the white smoke, hundreds of fingers of flame shoot out toward the objective. If you can appreciate that sort of thing in a setting like this, why, there it is. Personally, we'd rather see it in the newsreel.
Hello, Dick. Hello, Dick. This is Steve. Over. Hello, Dick. Hello, Dick. Hello, Steve. Hello, Steve. This is Dick. Over. Dick. This is Steve. I can't seem to get through to you. I receive you, but I can't seem to put to you. Over. Hello, Steve. You're coming in now. Steve, over. Roger, Dick. Do you know what your situation is up there? We're getting another bad shelling. Hello, Steve. Our situation up here is this. They spotted an artillery piece, and we fired into it. With Mixer's tank over here, and my 75 has fallen up completely. I'm sitting here, and I can't contact Gilliger. Over. Roger, Dick. Steve, are you still getting the shell fire? Dick, we have spotted it in those caves up there on the high ground immediately to our front. Over. Hello, Steve. Hello, Steve. This is Clifford. Over. Hello, Tom. Steve, have you made contact with your infantry yet? Over. Steve, we're up here and can't make it through that damn ravine to our left. Can you give me some idea where you're at up there? Over. Roger, we're about at the right-hand corner of the airport. Right by those two big flags up there. Over. Roger, Tom, I'll see what I can do. Oh. Applejack, this is 8-ball. Over. Hello, Tom. Hello, Tom. This is Steve. Over. Hello, Steve. Hello, Steve. This is Tom. Over. I just talked to Jubba Joe, and he said what he knows, they're supposed to be within 100 yards of the airstrip. Over. We must be right around up here someplace, Steve. There isn't a hell of a lot of infantry here. You know where that's... Those clothes are right on the edge of the airstrip, and we're not about 150 to 200 yards away from them. Over. But say, Steve, I can see some infantry now. They're about on... working up toward our left here, and I think we may be able to contact them here in just a few minutes. I'll let you know as soon as we can. Over. Roger, we're fighting the hell out of us. We let them have it every now and then. Go ahead and do your best, Tom. Hello, Steve, this is Dick. Over. Hello, Dick. Go ahead, boy. Over. Say, Steve, how far is Joe's outfit over here to the right? Over there. Over. Do you mean to your right? Over. That's right, Steve. To my right here. Over. Well, Dick, I don't know where you're at, but he's supposed to be bordering the beach for his right boundary. Over. I see, Steve. I got a pretty good idea where the hell he's at over there. I see men over there in the holes. The way I look at it right now, Steve, we're about, I'd say, 300 yards to the right of that cliff line over there. That'll give you a pretty good idea of where the hell I'm located. Over. I got you, Dick. 300 yards to the right of the cliff line. Over. That is correct, Steve. And, I can't see much fire coming there myself. Although you know how it is inside this damn thing. You can't see very well. And, the infantry around here are all in holes and they're not making no movement yet. Over. Roger, Dick. Out. Say, is that all fixed to come in yet? No, it has not, and I'm sure waiting on it here sitting in this hole. Over. Okay, Steve, will you get out of that hole? You know where the hell I'm at up here. I need to come up here and put this tank back on to fix this damn tank up. Roger, Dick. We have requested it several times now through battalion. The fire's been pretty heavy down here and a little skeptical on it, but I imagine they're sending her in now.
This is Staff Sergeant Alvin Josephi, Jr. We are on one of the runways of Motoyama Airfield number 1, and all around us is a scene of desolation and death. At the edge of the airfield are revetments in which our troops, our different command posts, have taken sanctuary. They have hidden behind them to keep out of range of the mortars and flying bullets which are coming from just up ahead. The last revetment back houses an aid station, and just in front of the aid station are stretchers on which must be about 50 dead Marines. They are being taken back for burial in our new cemeteries just beginning here. It is a dreadful sight, and one which would sober any person seeing it for the first time. These men are lying out in their camouflage ponchos and shelter-halves on stretchers. They have been brought back from the front lines, and the aid station men are caring for their remains with very great tenderness. They are being put aboard trucks and recons to be taken back now to the cemeteries. This is a dreadful, desolate, ugly island. The dirt is sort of a grayish, yellowish, volcanic ash, very soft and crumbly. And when you dig a foxhole, the sides keep coming in on you. There is very little vegetation because practically nothing grows here. It has to struggle. It has too great a struggle with the volcanic ash. Now we conclude this description of this little piece of hell on Iwo Jima.
Men in battle come up with some odd supply requirements. Often there's a Red Cross field man nearby who tries to figure out some answer to them. This was the case on Iwo Jima, where Bruce Thomas of the Red Cross had to use all kinds of shortcuts to give the Marines what they wanted. Here he is to tell about a few incidents that took place on Iwo Jima.
I'll bet 9 out of every 10 Marines has a Zippo lighter, including myself. So by D+5, everyone was out of fluid, and they came around to us to see what we could do. Well, that's my job. It's up to me to find substitutes, something neither the Red Cross nor the Marine Corps have what we need. So we find it somewhere, somehow. And on this matter of lighter fluid, I found some high-octane white gasoline. You have to use white gas because leaded gas will clog the lighter. And I obtained 5 precious gallons. We put this up in small brandy bottles that had been tossed aside by the Medical Corps, and we had quite a monopoly on lighter fluid.
Did you find any Jap equipment you could use?
No, that's all turned over to the military authorities. But I wouldn't use any anyhow. It's too dangerous. A lot of boys have run into booby traps that way.
But the Japs don't use booby traps as much as the Germans, do they?
No, I guess they don't, but they're crazy fighters. You can't predict what they'll do. They'll advance when they haven't a chance. They'll retreat when they don't have to. You just never know. My favorite story of the whole campaign concerns a typical stunt of the Japs. They were shooting off rockets. It was a very strange experience to meet with this kind of Jap stupidity, for you see, we'd be in our foxholes and hear these rockets being fired, and everyone would crouch down thinking it would explode the whole area. Well, nothing happened. We didn't crawl out to see why. We just stayed right in our foxholes. But the next morning, the Marine experts would go out and find that the Japs had fired the propeller part of the bomb and had forgotten to put the head on. There wasn't any explosive in it. And yet, with obvious stupid tricks like these, the Japs are fanatical fighters. They get in their foxholes and you can't get them out. They fight like mad.
This is Staff Sergeant Alvin Josephi, Jr. We are with a battalion aid station of the 21st Marines, just behind the front lines on Iwo. What is your name, Doctor?
Dr. Harry S. Mustard, Jr.
And where are you from?
325 East 72nd Street, New York City.
Well, Doctor, what was the first thing that happened here that put you on edge?
Oh, when we first came up here, there were shells falling all over the place. pretty thick fire.
Then you had some real casualties here, didn't you?
Had quite a few of them. Even while in reserve, the regiment, the battalion rather kept on having casualties. Other outfits in our area kept having casualties. Went on the hill just in deaths, and casualties were brought back in for treatment while we were under fire. Had quite a few casualties there.
And you had to take care of those men. And were there any dead men in that?
Yes, quite a few dead men. I think there were 2 in all, and several bad casualties probably down later on.
What's your name and race?
Thomas J. Kyle, Pharmacist Mate First Class, USN.
And where are you from, Tom?
Rockdale, Texas.
What happened?
Well, when I first noticed, I heard a terrific racket, and I saw a lot of debris going high in the air. I thought it was a shell at first, and later they told me it was a mine that just had exploded on the airfield. We noticed patients laying out there, all burned, and 3 of us ran across and to get them and bring them back into our aid station.
Well, now, you may not want to say that, but actually going out there to get those men back meant exposing themselves to fire and mortars and all kinds of small arms. But you did bring them back and took care of them. Did you get any rest?
No, we didn't get much rest. There's things happening pretty fast that day around here. We just opened our last can of milk, and shrapnel punctured a hole right near the bottom, and it all drained out on us.
We delay the program schedule for this time to bring you a special news report from Guam. For the first time in this war, a B-29 Superfortress has landed on Iwo Jima. By the sheerest accident, one of the big sky bombers roared down on the tiny island where heavy hand-to-hand fighting is taking place. But now we call in war correspondent John Hooley on Guam. Go ahead, Guam.
This is Guam. Here are 2 men of a B-29 crew. They're here to tell the hair-raising story of the first Superfortress to land on Iwo Jima. On one side of me sits Lieutenant Raymond Fred Malo of Danville, Illinois, and on the other, Sergeant James Cox from Merriam, Kansas. Lieutenant Malo is pilot of the Iwo Weenie, named after the exploit, and Sergeant Cox is a radio operator. The Iwo Weenie landed on Iwo Jima yesterday and took off 4 hours later. The sergeant, by the way, isn't a talkative person, so you're going to have to help out, Fred.
Sure, this is Fred Malo. How about saying hello, Jim?
Hello, everybody. This is Sergeant Cox.
Good start. Now, tell me, how'd you happen to be up over Iwo Jima anyway?
We were returning from Sunday's big strike on Tokyo. Our first mission, by the way. Sergeant Cox and I came out here as part of a crew 2 weeks ago, and this is our first big job.
The first we knew we couldn't make our base was about 360 miles out of Tokyo on the home run. The bomb bay doors wouldn't shut after we made the run, and they'd drag so much that we were using up gasoline too fast.
I passed the word to throw out the loose equipment in case we had to make a water landing, so no one would get hurt.
We tossed overboard all flak suits, the camera, and expended all our ammunition to lighten the ship.
I told Cox to use emergency rescue procedure.
But the best I could do was to contact flight control at Iwo Jima.
And what did they say?
They asked what the trouble was. When I told them we were low on fuel and had jammed the bomb bay doors, they asked us whether we wanted to chance it to land on the strip. Lieutenant Malo told me to say he would try the strip.
You say we didn't want to lose the ship, and after all, a water landing is dangerous.
Well, now we've got you to Iwo Jima.
That's where Lieutenant Malo took over.
We had to make 3 passes to field 4 feet from the ground to even get an idea what it would be like.
How much airstrip does a B-29 need?
About twice as much as I could see down there.
But you came down okay.
That's right. Everybody held on tight, and I came in alongside Mount Suribachi. After using up about 600 feet of runway, we touched down. Right away, I put on the hydraulic brakes, and co-pilot Lieutenant Ed Mockler of Park Falls, Wisconsin, pulled on the emergency brakes.
Everything turned out fine?
Oh, sure. We knocked down the wind sleeve at the end of the runway, but the Iwo Weenie skid to a stop, and we stayed on the strip.
I hear you made quite a sensation.
You're right. Before we got our breath back, we were surrounded by Marines and construction men. They were lining the field when we came in.
And how long were you on the strip?
About 4 hours. We got off there as soon as we could. So after we bought some gas, we decided to try a takeoff.
That was just before dark.
Yes, I gunned the motors. There's a lot of horsepower in 4 B-29 engines and held the brakes. Then just when we were turning over at full power, I let go of the brakes and we started out like a shot. It was like a catapult. We got off all right and flew on down to our base without any trouble.
So you saw Iwo Jima and Tokyo all in one day, and on your first mission, too.
That was exciting enough for 10 missions.
Those Marines up there were swell. I want to say a word for my crew, too. We couldn't have done it without everybody working in a team.
This is Bud Foster speaking from the flagship of Admiral Kelly Turner off Iwo Jima. After 6 days of touch-and-go situations on this island, the Marines on D+6 seem to have themselves well established and are now launching what may well be the final all-out drive to break the backbone of remaining organized Japanese resistance at the northern end of the island. American confidence that the southern half of the island no longer offers any real threat to their beachhead or invasion vessels offshore has been exemplified as the entire fleet, with but few exceptions, has moved to within a few hundred yards of the shoreline, within easy range of any remaining Jap artillery or mortars in the Suribachi area. Jap anti-aircraft fire brought down one of our Navy planes this morning, another of less than a half dozen American planes which have fallen victim to the battle. I watched him circle over the center of the island, saw a burst of ack-ack, then the engine caught fire, and a long trail of heavy black smoke plumed out as he made his way out to sea to escape falling among our ships offshore. But the pilot must have been hit. Off the northern end of the island, he suddenly went into a dive and plunged into the ocean close to our transport. A big explosion followed. A little smoke and fire for a few minutes was all that marked the watery burial place of those Americans. I thought to myself, General Sherman was certainly a master of understatement. This is Bud Foster speaking for the combined American radio network.
What's been happening since the historic day when the Stars and Stripes were planted on Suribachi? We hear now from Marine Combat Correspondent Bill Ross with the 3rd Division, speaking near one of the rebuilt airfields on Iwo.
This island during the past month has had its face lifted. Virtually nothing about Iwo remains the same as it was when the Marines landed. Mount Suribachi, the 500 feet high extinct volcano on the southern tip of the island, even it presents a vastly different picture than it did on D-Day and the days immediately following. When the Leathernecks first stormed the almost sheer slopes of the small mountain, nothing but rocky paths led to its summit. Now a modern American road zigzags back and forth to the pinnacle where the Stars and Stripes first were implanted on Iwo Jima. The Japanese, since they owned Iwo, and no one can remember when they didn't, the Japanese hadn't bothered to construct roads to any great degree here. Already there's a network of miniature American highways that carry the jeeps and trucks and other vehicles almost everywhere they care to go. Most certainly, there were no traffic cops on Iwo when we came ashore, but we have them here now. An MP is situated at virtually every intersection on the island's road network, directing traffic and seeing that the island's 15-mile-an-hour speed limit is observed. Not only has the ownership and management of Iwo Jima changed, but the island itself, and the change is for the better.
You may think you know what Iwo Jima was like, and perhaps you do. For a vivid close-up of several incidents which he witnessed on Iwo, let's hear what Leslie Nichols had to say upon his return to Guam.
Never have I seen life and death in such close embrace as on Iwo Jima. I doubt if there are 10 square feet on the island that have not been soaked with American or Japanese blood. The day before yesterday, I visited several battalions of the 5th Marine Division just behind the front lines. At one point, we had to cross an open field to reach a company which was resting at the base of a low ridge. Unflushed Jap snipers were able to cover this area from positions in caves. Bullets pinged across as we raced for the ridge. I jumped for a dugout and landed in the lap of a Marine. He turned out to be Captain Aram Rajabian. Captain Rajabian led his company in that final push yesterday, and I hope he made out well. His company was going in to relieve another which had lost 8 successive commanders. A private first class was the 9th to take over. I wanted to meet the private and hear his story. Just then, 2 stretcher bearers sneaked around the ridge and passed us on the way to the first aid station. Someone said to me, "There's your company commander." I stepped up and asked one of the corpsmen how the private was getting along. The stretcher bearer stopped a moment. The corpsman lifted the blanket and said, "He just died." I fell into conversation with one of the wounded lying on the ground. As with nearly all Marines, he was cheerful. No complaints, no whimpering. This corporal was proud of the Japanese flag he had found on D-Day +10. He had stuffed it into his shirt front and carried it everywhere. When he fell from a Jap bullet yesterday morning, he had tied the flag around his bare leg, just for safekeeping. But the doctor had to take it off. So the corporal asked me to reach under the blanket for a small gunny sack containing his personal belongings. He wanted me to see his Jap flag. I looked in the sack, but there was no flag. I had to tell him. I searched all around the stretcher, still no flag. Evidently it had been stolen. The corporal looked up at me and there was grief in his eyes. I killed 3 Japs before I got that flag, he said. I wanted to give it to my dad to put up on the wall over the fireplace. Now it's gone and I'm leaving Iwo Jima. He turned his head slightly and the tears began to flow, and I had to turn my head too because I thought I would cry.
Not all the heroes of the Pacific are men. Recently, when Marine Combat Correspondent Sergeant Bill Ross came across 9 new puppies being cared for by the men of the 3rd Marine Division, he inquired further, and he learned that the deceased father had been a hero on Iwo, along with his master. Here is Sergeant Ross with the 3rd Division somewhere in the Pacific.
There's a new family with our outfit today, a family that numbers 9 in all. The father of the clan was a well-known figure in the 3rd Division. I say was a well-known figure because he was killed on Iwo Jima. His name was Rusty, and he was a Marine war dog. The new family is his puppies, which he never saw. Rusty, since his death, has become somewhat of a legend to the men of the 3rd. For among the sulfur caves and rugged hills of northern Iwo, he gave his life in a vain attempt to save the life of his handler. It happened just before the close of the campaign. Rusty and his master, Private First Class Walter Josephek of Detroit, Michigan, were leading a patrol which already had cleaned out 2 small nests of Japs. When they moved in on the 3rd pocket, a heavily defended cave, Marine Josephek was hit by rifle fire and dropped to the ground with a wound in his leg. The Detroit man was unable to move because of the wound and the rough terrain. He called for the other Marines to call the dog to safety, but Rusty refused to leave. He stood his ground between his master and the enemy, snarling defiance at the Japs. The enemy troops in the cave seemed to sense that their time had come, but they were determined to fight to the last. They kept firing at Josephek and the other Marines, and hand grenades became a potent weapon in the skirmish. Josephek and Rusty remained in the hot spot between the battling troops. And when a Jap grenade landed in front of the Detroit man, the dog took the full impact of the blast. Without whimpering, he slumped to the rocky ground next to his master, still between the Marine and the Japs. And there it was that Rusty died on Iwo Jima. Josephek was removed from the area as the other men in the patrol moved forward and wiped out the Japs. He died the next day. I happened on the scene of the fighting just as 4 Marines were placing the dog's body on a stretcher to carry it to the rear, where Rusty was buried in the 3rd Marine Division's War Dog Cemetery. The grizzly leathernecks picked up the dog with the same tender care they would have given a fellow Marine. He was sure a swell dog, said one Marine, a war-tested veteran, every bit of 19 years old. So goes the story of Rusty, the father of the newest additions to the 3rd Marine Division. 9 tiny Doberman Pinscher puppies destined to be Marine war dogs. Rusty and PFC Josephek were inseparable in life, and, in doing the job assigned to them, met death fighting the Japs on Iwo.
We are speaking to you from the summit of Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima. Last February 19th, the United States Marines established their beachhead on this grim, cruel, forbidding 8 square mile stretch of volcanic ash and lava island that lies halfway between Saipan and Tokyo. On March 16th last, Fleet Admiral Nimitz announced that organized resistance was over at Iwo Jima. It's dusty here, volcanic earth dust that is on everything and in everything. American trucks, bulldozers, caterpillars, jeeps, every known kind of mechanical earth-moving device is adding more dust. 2 airfields have been put in operation. A few Quonset huts are going up. Acres of what once, a very short time ago, were foxholes are now covered with pup tents. There is no time for amenities or any comforts of life. There are scarcely any trees, just scrub brush that is even more bedraggled than ever as a result of the withering, blistering fighting that went on. And as highlights in this black ash and brown-green brush, trim, white, symmetrical gravestone markers. Row after row of them gleam whitely in the distance. They are the graves of United States fighting men. And in the midst of sacrifice, of life, of the heat of construction, even while B-29s land, there is still potential death around. Not all the Japs on Iwo Jima are dead.
Not all its honeycombs of caves have been explored. The sniper's bullet can come pinging out of the night at any moment. But despite all this, the danger, the pressure of work, the lack of things non-fighters would consider necessities of life, even the wisps of steam that drift up through the volcanic ground itself, Iwo Jima is now American territory. And the fact that the island is ours is proven by the American flag that flies from the central airport. The Battle of Iwo is won. I return you to Guam.
And that's the situation today at Iwo Jima, our latest conquest. Now for news of progress where today's fighting is, we take you to a spot less than 400 miles from the Japanese mainland, to Okinawa. Go ahead, Okinawa.